there were so many ways in which it did not feel good to be in my body. And nobody had told me that it was supposed to feel good to be in a body. Like, how is this a revolutionary idea to expect? Like, it is supposed to feel good to be in a body. Why else do you have one? Hi, we're Jamie and Joan, two humans and bodies who take care of bodies for a living.
We created this podcast as practical medicine for bodies living through this disembodied time.
We want to invite you to come sit with us and experience the beautiful, loving, complex person that is your body.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Joan.
I was just saying earlier how ethereal you look in your sunlit room. So I'm going to name it up front. You got to watch the video version and notice that Jamie has a heavenly glow upon her.
That's kind of all I have right now. It's actually quite hard to see me with the combination of my very old laptop and kind of a filmy camera on the laptop. It already gives me this kind of soft touch, kind of like the 90s. You know what I'm talking about? The 90s,
like a music video?
No, like the photo studios where you'd go to, you get your hair all done up.
Yes, like Sears portraits.
Yeah. There's one I'm thinking of. I can't remember the name of, but my laptop already kind of makes me look like that all the time, which I don't mind. And then the addition of this streaming sunlight through the window, I don't fully look human.
I love it though. It's sort of fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Mystery.
Yes.
Well, I think you have a question to ask me. Just say.
Perfect segue. I do have a question to ask you. Joan, how have you experienced your anatomy this week?
So many ways. The way I experienced my anatomy this week that I wanted to give a shout out to, you may even hear in the quality of my voice, which is already not even alto, I'm a tenor. If you know choral things, I have a deeper register. And now I gotta record a jazz track after this or something because I have a cold.
She's a bass.
I'm a bass. And it started at the end of last week, and I really experienced my upper respiratory tract over this past week. And I've had colds throughout my life, but it's actually interesting the story I tell about how I have a cold now and how I experience colds now versus before, and definitely in the pandemic, that was a whole different story and then evolving versions of intensity about that. Absolutely. And now I'm landing in a friendlier place while still thoughtful about how I'm aware you can share colds, whether this one, whatever respiratory virus this is, I would love to not share, especially for those that don't wish to receive. I don't have a choice in my house. So my kids definitely gave it to me.
You did not want to be shared with, but alas.
But I'm just not going to avoid kissing them all the time.
That's very understandable.
It's back to school. It's back to school. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the thing that happens when I have a cold is if in some ways it makes me just more mindful of my impact on other humans, which is interesting, And so before hanging out with people, just saying, hey, this is where I'm at. What do you think? Some of that stuff, it's sort of nice to have a reason to think through those things in my workplace as well. And then, it slows me down in a different way. It reduces my capacity. My brain gets a little fuzzier. And sometimes that's not a bad thing, honestly. Sometimes then it's I've only got the one spoon for this interaction. What am I scooping? So I appreciate it for that. And I don't need more reasons to have naps anymore. I love a little nap. But the naps feel even more restorative when you are sick. So with that, I have a question for you, Jamie.
Oh, I wonder what it is.
How have you experienced your anatomy this week?
So many ways, Joan, just so many ways. So I'm going to build a little bit off of what I mentioned last week of the experience of the sensations in my right foot that were then causing me to have to move through the world differently because there was all that pain and inability to, just really walk normally or put as much weight on my right side, or even like bend my foot in, seemingly like normal ways. And so that really limited a lot of the things I was able to do. But my body heals really quickly. And in fact, when I first, this is fun because this is what we're here for, right? When I first got injured, I muscle tested to see how long it was going to take for my body to heal. And 2 weeks is what I was told. And that is correct. I'm, a few days out from 2 weeks from the injury, and I'm almost at like full 100% functioning capacity again from it. But what that has meant in the last calendar week from answering this question previously to now, that means that the restricted movements and the limitations on my activities, I've started to like slowly find my way back into normal ways of functioning, but having to bring greater intention to those. So it's this middle space of like, I'm not restricting all of my motion, but I can't do everything 100%. And so I've had to have a lot of intention and awareness. And so I've been able to go back to yoga again. Like I've done yoga like every day for the last like 5 days, which felt great because I could barely move and really do much for the few days in the immediate aftermath of the injury. And that combined with been doing some house projects over this past weekend. I was here alone. My partner Tyler was traveling. And so I just got to dive in with a bunch of projects. And the combination of going back to yoga and using a roller to paint multiple walls in my house, wow, have I been experiencing my anterior shoulders. Woo! Just like real, and it's less now. It's definitely less loud and less touchy. But for those first few days, the doing chaturanga push-ups again and various other, engagement of the shoulders, and then also just doing this motion over and over. It comes in really handy being ambidextrous when painting. Roller's not that serious, but I'm truly ambidextrous, so I can like switch the brush back and forth for like detailed stuff as well. I know, you're so jealous. Wow. I can tell. I know, it's great.
I am jealous. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And so, there's just been a lot of like overhead and stuff. So my shoulders, but particularly like the anterior side of my shoulders were really tender. And in that tenderness, this is kind of just how I've been overall as a human in a body. I've been experiencing a lot of emotional tenderness in the last week. And the through line of that physical tenderness and the emotional tenderness, it all just increases my appreciation for the experience of getting to be in a body in the first place. Like I get to be here. I get to be feeling these sensations. I get to have the human experience of discomfort occurring and arriving and then staying with it. Like there's something just so profound about noticing sensations, noticing discomfort, noticing pain, and breathing through it. I think that's been, maybe I could say, the primary spiritual practice of the last few years of my life, is just absolutely developing an immovable awareness and an intention, holding the intention of awareness that like I can breathe through any sensation that is occurring. And every time I do that, it increases the gratitude I have in the direction of my body and this like wondrous being that I get to have the human experience with and in and through. So all of that came from really noticing my anterior shoulders in the last calendar week.
Love. Shout out to shoulders.
Shout out to shoulders. Ooh, that's a good t-shirt.
Well, Jamie, I'm so happy to hear some of what you experienced this past week, just because I always love to hear it. And it always connects me to my body more, because I just then think about, my own shoulders and how I cannot fully do a chaturanga push-up. And so I'm on my journey towards that personally. And I'm excited to hear about it because this episode is all about hearing about your experiences with your anatomy. This is the Jamie episode. Ooh. The one you've all been waiting for, obviously.
Really? Wow.
Yes, of course. Are you kidding? with that, I would just love to dive in.
Let's do it.
So I think I would love to start with the origin story. I love an origin story.
Yeah.
It's the best part of any, franchise. And so for you as a human, not a franchise, starting pre the public version of your life, like what is it that you want those listening to know about your origins?
Well, it's interesting because there are ways in which, the previous public persona / version of me had some really well rehearsed, and not in a disingenuous way, just in this is who I think I am. And so these are the stories I repeatedly tell that contributed to the development of who I think I am. So I know I know the ways I've answered this question before. I know the ways in which I could answer this question now. And at this point in my life, what I most want to be doing all the time is just saying what is true and just saying the truest possible thing. And today, it's hard to find an answer to that question of like, who am I? How did I get here? Because I don't have a whole lot of investment in my perception of my own identity anymore. And a lot of that is because of the journey I've taken in relationship with my body, and the fact that I don't have a lot of identities that I cling to anymore, because I'm just so committed to getting out of her way. And I'm so committed to making sure that I am always telling the truth, because that's what makes her the most well. That's my little precursor to the actual answer. And I suppose what I will say now that I've gotten that out of the way, I've said my piece about that part, and I've spoken on her behalf of like, I don't really have any like deep investment into making sure I like maintain a specific kind of identity or identity story, origin story. I think what's feeling present today is to kind of start sort of where adjacent to the question that I asked you last time about like, when did I first experience my anatomy? Because I really love the way in which you articulated, like, there's an adult version, and when we can maybe get into that a little bit later. But the younger version of me, that's obviously kind of where I go in thinking about origin story and who I am, is just thinking like, who was I before I had to try and like be anyone or pretend that I was anyone in the world. And how that showed up for me, I was a body telling the truth in the Midwestern United States. I was born in New Jersey, but my family relocated to suburbs outside of St. Louis when I was very young. And that's where I spent the majority of my developmental years, and also raised evangelical Christian. And so the combination of those two things of like growing up in the Midwest and growing up in evangelical Christianity very much contributed to this, I don't really know quite how to say it, but just like over time, the decrease of permission to really tell the truth of my body and in my body and through my body. There were ways in which when I was very young, I was encouraged to be all here in my physicality. And then there are ways in which, as I grew up in, the body of a young girl that would become a future grown woman, it was kind of disorienting to discover that some of those truth tellings started to become kind of off limits or threatening or seen as and experienced as suspicious or wrong in some way. And in order to be right and good, I needed to shut those down and kind of start paying more attention to the direct external expectations that were being imposed upon me by the people around me, both real people around me and the imagined entities around me, like the God that was being described to me, which was always quite different than the God that I had a felt experiential sense of, which I have very much now returned back to and feel at home in the language of and in relationship with. So I would say, we can kind of speed this along and say, like, I developed some really incredibly adaptive but unhelpful codependent tendencies throughout my life. And simultaneously, it's interesting because I also, if we're going to frame this in kind of Enneagram typing language, I don't know if it feels true anymore to say I am and then a number. I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, I was about to say it and I was like, that doesn't feel true. But I have identified with being an 8. That is what I have like typed as, and the tests I've taken have reflected that to me. And there are definitely ways in which I have exhibited the characteristics of an 8 much more in the past than in the present. But I think, if people were to listen to past recorded interviews with me, that would be pretty clear, like the personality type of like the strong, needing to be in control and kind of knowing everything or needing to posture as if I know, everything. I think it would maybe be surprising for some people to hear that like that person sounding those ways was really suffering, and in many ways privately and personally like non-functional under the weight of like unconsciously waiting for her marching orders all the time. And that was definitely being expressed through my body. That was being expressed through I guess maybe I'll say this too. I am someone who, from the moment I got here in a body, there were things that were like not functioning maybe normally or properly in my body. And I now see very clearly that that was a way in which my body, the whole time I've been partnered with her, has been trying to tell me like that things were needed that were not provided, whether that's individually or systemically. And she's been doing me the incredible, loving favor my whole life of trying to get me to notice like what is off and what is out of integrity and what is misaligned, and to try and work with her and cooperate with her to bring that back into alignment. And I really, only came into conscious awareness of that about 2.5 years ago. Wow. Which is a funny timeline, considering I've been doing embodiment coaching and somatic facilitation, for much longer than that. But, there are ways in which we project many things outward in an effort to not notice those things inward. And I was doing that for a long time, while also apparently, from what I've heard from people, like providing a really helpful service at the same time. So I love grace. That's wonderful. But once I kind of caught up to me and caught up to my body and stopped really living in this like bulldozing way where I was insisting upon continuing these adaptive strategies and then expecting my body to just fall in line and adhere alongside me. Once all of that came crashing down, and I really was just kind of faced with no other choice but to look really closely and quietly how I had contributed to my own suffering, a lot of clarity came through. And fascinatingly enough, all of those previous symptoms and dysfunctions and imbalances and illnesses, whether physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, I think maybe the simplest way to put it, are all now actively in a version of remission, which is why I am a person who has no other choice but to believe that everything can be healed, because I am not special. I am just consciousness animated into living matter, just like everyone else. What I believe about bodies, if I have experienced it to be true for my body, my own integrity necessitates that I must believe that to be true about every body. And that's really what started my own healing and the way in which my body called me to integrity. And following her lead and experiencing the healing impact of that is really what shifted my entire paradigm for what I believed about the body, and then how I showed up as a facilitator. And there are many ways in which the things I believe and then the ways I practice from that belief are super different from past versions of me personally and professionally. And sometimes that's hard to square. Sometimes that makes me really nervous, and it makes me feel the way I'm going to show up in the world could be rejected. I'm in an active process right this very minute of learning how to just like not self-reject and just stay aligned with what I know to be true, because I love her and I have to, because this is who she is. This is who she has shown me that she is. And she is not special or unique. She is a body, and you have a body, and everyone else has a body. And so this has to be how bodies work. I can't arrive at any other conclusion than that everything can be healed. Because if the person who had the nervous system, who was doing those podcast interviews in like 2018 and 2019 can be here now, and if I have the information about like what was going on inside of my physical body and my emotional world and my relationships at the time, and just how unsustainably, and painfully messy all of that was, I have to believe that what I have experienced is for everyone. I mean, this is another thing. Like, this is how I speak now. I tend to speak more in abstract, and you can thank psychedelics for that. Like that's a lot. That's a big part of this, is like what those have done to me or my perception of self. It's both this like increased delight in the experience I'm having, and this kind of dispelling of the illusion that I'm special in having this experience in any way, because I really do believe that this kind of partnership with the body is for everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. From afar, I watched some of this journey, and then up close for the last bit, right?
Yeah.
But I encountered you first through those initial podcast interviews. That's how I like knew who you were. This is a personal question. So you can say like pass, and we can even just like cut it, right? I am curious. I think it would be helpful for some to hear, like, what were some of the specific ways your body was speaking to you? Only as much as you wanted to say, but like how were the most common ways your body was letting you know you hadn't quite found your integrity? Potentially, especially ways in which then you first sought answers outside of yourself, for example, in the healthcare system. I don't know if you want to talk about this at all, but I think it would be very relevant to speak of if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. The main one that comes to mind is the thing that was ultimately for me kind of the final straw, but it is also kind of the main origin. So I have had hard to live with digestive issues from the moment I got here. I didn't know until about 10 years ago, in conversation with my mother, her reflecting to me the reality of like my experience in my infant body, which essentially, to just summarize kind of quickly, was kind of this: I was borderline failure to thrive because my mother couldn't breastfeed me. And I can't quite remember what it is that I was being fed as an alternative, but my body was rejecting it. The first few months of my life, I was starving because I couldn't hold anything down. I couldn't actually digest what I was being fed. And very long story short, my parents, and particularly my mother, was in so much distress over this. And from her articulation of the story, they had really done everything they thought they could do to figure out what was going on with me, and nothing was working. And someone suggested they take me to an allergist. Now, this was like late 80s, and that wasn't a super common thing. But they went ahead and they did that. And they determined that I had all these allergies. And so they started like special ordering this formula. And then I started being able to digest food. I kept it down, and I started to gain weight. And what I now know about the ways in which my birth process, the process of me being born, and then also what was going on in my mother's body while she was creating me, and how all of this like assembled my specific gut microbiome. Like, I know that what was going on both was and was not that I was allergic to something. It's that like stuff was just not, assembled in the way that it really needed to be assembled internally. And so the difficulty in digesting food continued throughout my life. I have one specific vivid image in my mind of being a kid in my school lunchroom and eating lunch and looking around and being really confused about why the other bodies of the other children weren't doing what my body always did after I ate anything, which was bloat up as if I was, many months pregnant. And this happened my whole childhood. Most dinners that we had as a family, I would need to go lay down on the couch. And the only thing that helped was laying on my stomach because I was in so much pain after eating. And it ended up becoming this really kind of like painful, emotionally painful thing because at a certain point, my family members thought I was faking it to get out of like cleaning up after dinner and doing dishes. But I was in so much pain that I didn't know how to articulate what was going on, and nobody else was. And so I was confused. And so, I was confused as to why my schoolmates' bodies didn't do the thing my body was doing. And because my body did that thing the way I thought like bodies worked and digestion worked, I literally thought when you ate food, it all just it bloated up your stomach, and then it sat in your stomach, and then eventually your stomach flattened out as your body digested, because that is the only experience that I had in my body. That then contributed to me identifying with the word fat entirely too early, and then it was the 90s, so identifying as if that was some kind of bad thing in general. So those were two mistakes, and that led to really early experiences and many years of disordered eating, which then compounded the problem with my digestion. When I was 18, I started having these things that my family just started calling my spells. And they're hard to describe, but they were digestive related, where I would get so nauseous and sick in my stomach after eating that my vision would start to blur, and I would start to get really sweaty, and I would pass out. And after high school, I moved to Africa, like a good little Christian. It was great. I had a good time. I was like living on this hospital ship for 7 months. And the first time one of these spells hit me, I was actually off the ship, kind of out in Accra in Ghana, and I passed out in a bathroom. And the people I was with had to like call the ship, and they had to send people to pick me up. And then that kind of kept happening for many years on and off. I got an endoscopy or colonoscopy and an endoscopy when I was 19, and, heard back that we can't find anything wrong. But then also heard like, as you can do when you have a prolonged eating disorder, there was damage that I had done to my body. And my mother has worked in the hospital system for many, many years. And so I got these procedures done at the hospital where she works. So she had a personal rapport with this physician, and he pulled her aside and encouraged her to ask me really gently about whether or not I was throwing up after I was eating because of the state of my gallbladder specifically. And I was actually put on a medication when I was 20 years old that I was told I was going to need to be on for the rest of my life, which was essentially a medication that I needed to take 30 minutes before I ate anything. And it was a medication that was going to flip on the light switch of my digestive system because my digestive system did not know how to turn on its own.
Yeah.
I took that until I stopped taking it. Just there's a lot in my 20s. I could talk about the ways in which I was dissociated and like not helping myself. Yeah. And basically all of these issues just continued and compounded for many years. And there was a period of time where I started becoming, right around the time that I got my health coaching certification, I started becoming, imagine this, curious, that I'm wondering if maybe things I was eating was having anything to do with how my body was and wasn't digesting food. So that was my first foray about 11 years ago with like removing gluten and being like, whoa, wow, I feel so much better. But then that led to this over-identification of just like, I must have this disease apparently.
Yeah.
And so all of this, there's so much more to say, but fast forward to during, the early years of COVID, all the digestive issues continued and just increased in intensity for all of the reasons that have to do with like a chronically activated nervous system. And got me to a point in the end of 2022 where I was like, I need answers. And I'd been working with my mom and she was really helping me with stuff. And all of this culminated in me like working with like the best doctor at like, the best GI at the best hospital, and like I got an endoscopy to get like a confirmation of a diet and nothing. They found nothing. And I was so frustrated, but not with, I don't know. It's hard to say who I was frustrated at or what I was frustrated towards because I wasn't frustrated with the doctor who could find nothing that there wasn't anything to find. And I think I was frustrated with myself. I finally got to a point of admitting that something I'm doing here isn't working and I need to stop going to these expensive, because it's the United States, these like insanely expensive resources that like apparently are not really the resources I need to go to help me because they're finding nothing. There's nothing to find. Like something else is going on here. And it was almost like I remembered my own values. I remembered my own ethics of like, just this curiosity of like, I think it's my nervous system. I think it's like the way I'm keeping myself mentally and emotionally that is causing this like chronic and like unsustainable state of like alarm bells, emergency, danger all the time. That is really what prompted me to be like, I have been in this tension, in this conflict with my body for as long as I can remember, and longer than that, as long even before I can actually consciously make memories. And I have got to start wondering if I am contributing to what is going on in my physicality by what is going on in my mental and emotional world. Because that's the only thing I'm left with to draw. I've just, that's all I can start to assume. And that's why I made the decision to exit the allopathic medical system for 1 year was my decision at the time. It wasn't like a permanent thing then, but I was like, I've got to see if I can do some self-medicating here. And it was a dense process. It was a difficult process. And it was true the whole time. I could feel my body saying, oh, finally, you're listening. Finally, you're listening. Finally, you're here. Finally, you're not like doing the thing you've done since childhood, which is going to these external sources to say, tell me about me, explain to me what's going on with me, because I can't possibly know. It was like my body going, finally, you've gone into a quiet space where you're interested and holding the intention to just hear me. And I have so much to tell you about what's going on. And all of those symptoms are gone. Like they're just gone. I don't live with any of them anymore. And it's wild. Like it's also not surprising at all. Like this is what's really wild, Joan, is like I had been like telling other people for years that that's how I believe bodies work. And then it was finally my body being like, fucking prove it. Like, come here. Like, do this with me. And that is the thing that like sometimes I find to be really disorienting in like my own lived experience and sometimes really sensitive and hard to explain to other people who like past me was really identified with like, no, I have this condition. I am this illness. I am this way of being. And my body led me into like a field of freedom out beyond those definitions and so again, my passion for what someone could boil down to like alternative medicine is precisely based upon the belief that I am not special. I'm not fucking special. Like this cannot just be for me. I can't believe that. This has to just be something that is true about bodies. And then the more that I have leaned into that curiosity, the more people I have found that have had those similar lived experiences, and the more data I've been able to come across and gather about like, yeah, this is totally how bodies work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I got like goosebumps 50 billion times as you were talking. How does it feel to share that?
Hard.
Yeah.
But in a good way. Like I just really, my intention coming into this conversation was to just show up as a human and tell the truth. And I, feel some sensations in my body of insecurities about like, I don't know how to tell this part of the story, but that's why I'm here, is because I haven't told this part of the story yet. And so I'm learning as I go. And like in my personal life with me, I'm very comfortable doing that. Like I'm a better facilitator than I've ever been because I'm able to do that. I'm a better partner. I'm a better friend. I'm a way better daughter. I'm a way better sister. Like, and not better as in like morally higher or something, but like I'm kinder, I'm softer, I'm more present, I'm more compassionate. And when it comes to like creating polished pieces of media, I'm just like, am I good at this anymore? I don't know. I kind of ramble and I'm figuring it out, and I'm not trying to like land a thing to get a laugh, to feel the rush of I impressed that person. It's just like not interesting to me anymore. And so the trade-off of that is like sometimes I don't really know where I'm going when I open my mouth, and that's okay. So yeah, it feels tender. It feels kind of like I'm a little baby deer walking on some new legs, but that is precisely the part that feels good because I feel alive in it. I feel so much more alive in everything I'm doing now across the board, personally and professionally, than I ever previously did. And that is because of my body. That is because of her.
Well, if I may share how I experienced you sharing that story.
Yes, please.
I felt like it helped me connect with you and understand some of what you've experienced in a deeper way. The sense of vulnerability is it's kind of got a funky twist to it sometimes these days. I don't like the way you just told that. No notes. It's fine. You did a great job, if you will, like that way. Like, and I heard how you, and I was with you as you like walked through all the ways your body was speaking to you. You speak about your body with such love and tenderness at every point and without judgment in a way that is not modeled. And I just think it's really beautiful and revolutionary.
Thank you. It's really emotional to hear that reflection because I love her so much. I love her so much.
Yeah.
And I was killing myself. I really was. I was killing her. That's a piece of communication that came through in the spring of 2021 was her just being like, you've got to stop. You've got to stop treating me this way. It was a large ship to try and turn around. And so it took some time. And that word that I found as I was communicating a minute ago, like that is the truest word. It was a dense process. There was like a lot to sort through and a lot to really look at that I had spent my whole life not wanting to look at about like, why is she hurting this way? And how am I compounding that by like unconsciously contributing to getting the results in my life that I claim I would prefer to not have? Like, what's going on here? And none of this was my idea. It was her the whole time. Like, I just, had she not been loud in my online course and in my facilitation, there's a thing that I say because it's just been the truest thing I found in my life is a loud body is a kind body. Like they're trying to tell you something has gone wrong and we need your attention so that we can heal this together.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me about why bodies are doing what they're doing. It has to be that they're trying to love us. It cannot be that they're trying to fuck up our lives. It cannot be that consciousness animates into living matter just solely for the purpose of like dissatisfaction and disease until you die way earlier than you should. Like that can't be what's going on here. And for many years, I didn't consciously know that was what my belief was, but apparently it was because that's what I was doing. I was just like waking up in the morning, like not feeling fully here and reaching for my phone and scrolling Twitter just to find something to be angry about. And then like putting that anger outwards onto other people. And so not experiencing authentic connection. And then I was like, could barely digest my food. And then I wasn't sleeping at night. And then it just like, there were so many ways in which it did not feel good to be in my body. And nobody had told me that it was supposed to feel good to be in a body. Like, how is this a revolutionary idea to expect? Like, it is supposed to feel good to be in a body. Why else do you have one? Why else are you in one? What else are we doing here in a body? And my path over the last 3-4 years has been like going from this, like, it never for a second felt good to be in my body. Like for my whole life. I mean, there were definitely spurts and moments as a, because that's the thing. It's like, it does when you're a kid and then you unlearn all this stuff in this really unfortunate way. And then you have these like, but like by and large, it did not feel good to be in a body. And then it started to feel good to be in a body. And now it feels exquisite to be in my body constantly, even when it doesn't feel good, because I'm all here. And so I just, I love bodies more than anything because they're trying to wake us up. And she woke me up. And I'm not here for any other reason than that. And I'm just so grateful that following her lead and approaching her with compassion and curiosity instead of trying to control and shut her up, like led me to vitality and aliveness that I did not know was possible. And no one had ever really modeled for me in the first place. And again, I just cannot say it enough. I'm not fucking special. Like this is for everyone. This is for everybody.
Thank you so much. This is the part in the conversation where we usually take a little break. So I think we shall do that.
Great.
And then when we come back, we're going to have even more rich conversation and get to know Jamie in other ways. And we'll see what emerges, as well as some of those same rapid fire questions you gave to me. I want to save time for those because those are a good time.
I'm really excited about those.
Yeah. So stick with us and we'll be right back.
If you'd like to connect with us, we invite you to join us on Substack.
exanatomy.substack.com is the home for the Experiential Anatomy podcast. It's the place to stay up to date and never miss an episode, even if you're taking a break from social media.
You can subscribe for free, and you can contribute to the sustainable creation of these conversations by upgrading to a paid subscription. Paid subscribers get access to special content like audience Q&As, bonus episodes, and other supportive materials that we've created along the way.
We love it there, and we hope you will too. So, Jamie, I'm thinking about, everything you've already shared, and even what we were just talking about, the sense of worrying about not making sense. It feels connected to me. So, last episode, we talked a bit about what's sort of coming up for me as we embark on this project, and some of what this project is allowing me to explore and grow through, and what feels like my edges, if you will.
Yeah.
And I was curious what you'd like to share about what feels like your edges in putting out this particular podcast with this particular version of yourself, especially because unlike me, like I do have another podcast, but I feel like my journey in like public awareness of me is sort of doing it's quite small and it's sort of growing. Yours already had quite a growth. Like that's how I came to know you, was like I've been following you for years. You've had social media and podcast like presence and have been a type of a public figure for some time. And now this is coming through. And I'm curious about if anything feels sticky or tricky, what's coming up about that?
So last week, when you started sharing your answer to like this type of question where you were like, well, I had this conceptualization of like specific people on a specific social media platform having a huge problem with me doing this. Hard, same, different people, same platform, actually. Interestingly enough, the suffering that I had contributed to the creation of for myself had reached this like particular point, like right before the like, we're dropping off here. And I just completely stepped back from all public visibility and any sort of like public content creation significantly for a few years. There was this really interesting thing that happened on Twitter. It was actually right when I was promoting my online course, like when I first launched it, where there was someone who, as happens on Twitter, was like questioning, my right or ability to like make a thing and charge people money for it. What kind of happened in response was actually like really quite beautiful right at first. Like a whole bunch of my former clients were tweeting essentially just describing their experience of working with me and how like positively impactful it was in their lives, and even like how like profoundly it had changed their lives and permanently, like in some capacity. And then there was this whole like backlash to that. People who had even kind of started communicating this assumption that I had like orchestrated that and I had planned it, or I was like paying people to do this, or that these people were lying, or that there was something like wrong here with this, or that I like was a cult leader or something because of the degree of like devotion that people had towards me, as if these could not be like authentically generated responses from people who were like appreciative of a service I had provided. Yeah. And that, I'm carrying a little bit of that with me in this like stepping back into the public arena of like creating public work again. And it is definitely like linked to the fact that there are many things that I was not willing to say honestly and clearly when I was hyper concerned about the way I would be experienced on the internet, that have to do with my values and beliefs about bodies and their ability to heal, and the ways in which we are not helping ourselves and we're not helping our bodies when we are over-identified with certain terminologies and diagnoses, which a diagnosis is really just a name for a collection of currently expressing symptoms. And we're really not helping our bodies when we attach an assumption of permanence to those things, because in my belief, none of them are permanent. I don't believe any of them are permanent because I don't believe that about bodies. One of the things we're going to unpack continuing in this season is that, this belief that bodies are committed to wholeness and vitality. And so anything that is not wholeness and vitality, your body is not committed to. So if your body is not committed to it, they're not going to maintain it without your participation. I cannot believe in that. And there are many ways in which like some of these same people, which really aren't the people themselves, right? It's not like, it's like my archetypal imagining of the person. It's
Yes.
my own thoughts. It's my own, it's my own assumptions. And ultimately, if you dig deep enough in that, it's my own self-rejection. It is my own insecurity. Like those imagined people are mirrors that I'm holding up to see my own self in the ways that I am feeling insecure about, what I'm doing. And when I was participating in a lot of like the kind of online social justice culture of things, and was even like experienced as and perceived as kind of like a figurehead or a public persona upholding that microculture, I watched people be accused of being certain things or having specific identities, and even accused other people of being certain things and having specific identities if they did not align with a paradigm regarding bodies that did not believe that bodies were committed to wholeness and vitality. And I was out of integrity for many years and didn't know it. And again, I don't have any other choice now but to come into integrity, because this isn't a conceptual experiment or a conceptual exercise for me. This is what I have lived in my body. And as my facilitation has changed, I have seen this in the bodies of other people. And I think maybe a simple way to answer this question is like, I used to judge people who talked like me. There it is, right there. That's a simple, like I used to not just judge those people, but try and shore up some of my own safety in the online world by pointing at those people constantly and saying they were crazy, they were bad, they were evil, they were causing harm, they were fill in the blank with some kind of term with an ist on the end or a phobic on the end, that like, no curiosity in the direction of probably these people are articulating their direct lived experience. And so like, who am I to be able to disagree with that? And who am I to be able to prove that they're causing harm? Because what if there is one person that they have helped or assisted or supported in publicly communicating their experience or their belief, like then I don't get to make a blanket statement that this person is causing harm. And so I'm actively, as we're creating this project, working through some of those things that I still like, apologies that I need to make towards my own self, and then kind of into the ether towards some of these people that I had previously judged, that now it's like it's a real exercise in compassion for me to actually revisit like the pieces of media that those people had created, or the books that they wrote, or the things that they did, or the things that they are still doing, and find the ways in which I might have the ability to be more curious in their direction and just like accept them as having a human experience that is different than mine. And so I'm holding with me some fear that like that kind of curiosity and grace may not be extended to me, while all I am doing is articulating the lived experience that I have had and the data that I have gathered that people have given to me about their lived experience. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like I can't control that. And that's really my deepest, highest work, and kind of what you and I have both gotten to in our separate ways of like, I cannot control how I am going to be or have the potential to be experienced as I sit down and tell the truth. And or as I sit down and just wonder aloud at what the truth could possibly be. If that is difficult or upsetting to people, I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm not here for people, I'm here for bodies. So like I can allow the experience that any other person is having of me to not have anything to do with me. And I still need to tell the truth about what I know to be true about bodies, because I'm here for the well-being of your body, whether or not you believe that that is what I'm here for. I am here for the well-being of all bodies.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is helpful to hear. Just the reminder, it feels good to imagine that what everyone's doing is expressing their own experience. And say if someone knows in their soul that what they're doing is not that, instead they're sharing something for other reasons, then that's still actually some part of their journey.
Yeah.
Just out there in the world.
Yeah.
And then when I think about, so because I have been like, ever since I started having like a public social media account, I'm like, oh my gosh, but what if someone has a critical comment of me and
Right.
like,
Mm-hmm.
what if I get canceled? That's a funny,
Joan
tricky
will
terminology.
just call me up when or if
Yes.
an attempt at, I've got some advice. I don't really, I mean, I could have some advice. I really just have a soft place for you to land all of the feelings that will inevitably emerge when or if that happens.
That's it. Yeah. I love thinking about how what people are sharing is their own experience. Like, really, even if it's like they are saying you are bad,
right?
Like understanding that because I'm living over here, like whatever it is that they're perceiving cannot actually like fully define me anyway.
Yes. That's it.
So I appreciate you sharing that. I love that we are sort of starting this project by like kind of disclosing what feels tricky about the project.
Yes,
me
too.
I also think like for me, so it's like some of what like I may have had previous suspicions of, it's like if someone's like everything can be healed, it's like, so what are you selling me? Or what's and you're like, and this is, you can buy it in this bottle.
Right,
and like
absolutely.
The thing I love is really, you're like, I just want to share that this is my experience. And I am here for the bodies. I just it feels very safe for me to hear you say that, even with what may feel like an edge, because sometimes when people say things like that, they're maybe saying it for different purposes.
Totally. Yeah. And that's the thing too, that I have a real passion about not bringing awareness to that, but around people being aware of that too, because that is also happening. So it is, I do believe it is fundamentally true that everything can be healed because I believe in bodies that much. And I do know that there are people who knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously are taking advantage of that in order to try and prop themselves up as the arbiter of that, or to sell something that they created in order to, it really just, for me, it all goes back to, I believe that because of what I believe about bodies, AKA I believe that because of what I believe about your body, whoever you are in front of me right now, not because of something I'm doing or can do or have done, or, or I'm trying to sell you. Like, you worked with me as a client, and I do my best to remember to say to every person that I'm working with, usually towards the beginning, that what I'm attempting to do here in the space that I'm holding as a facilitator and as a coach is to reveal to you, if you did not know it already, that there isn't anything that you actually need from me. My whole purpose here is to hold space and prompt you to go back to yourself over and over and over and over. And the ideal scenario is one where, at the end of our time working together, you feel so equipped with you that, there isn't a dependence created upon me or something that I did, or, that, because again, that's in alignment with my values. That's in alignment with my integrity. If I was trying to get you or anyone else to develop a dependency or some kind of devotion onto me, that would mean that I would then be living out of alignment with my belief that bodies have everything you need. And they may not have everything, but they have all the information you need. So I can get in the way of that information. That's totally possible. If I try and be your guru, your savior, your whatever, I'm getting in the way of your body. I'm not willing to do that. It also necessitates my ability to notice when there are other people who are trying to do that, and to name that honestly as well.
Okay, it is now time for question and answer period. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Some
Let's
cues.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. What else did you want to be when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Like Indiana Jones?
Yes, exactly. Okay, yes. Really what it is that I had a huge crush on Harrison Ford, and I wrote about him in my diary when I was like 8 years old or something. I was a thirsty young gal. Like very first diary entry, I was like, guess what, diary? I have a crush, and he's like 47 or something like that. Like I was not concerned with how old he was. And it came from my love of Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And I have just always been really fascinated by history and mythology in particular. It makes so much sense to me now that I know I'm a very mythopoetic person, mythopoetic soul animated into living matter.
I wouldn't have picked that answer out of a lineup, but I love it so much. What is your current favorite public figure and why?
Martha Beck.
She's so good.
Oh, she's so good. She's just, so essentially, Martha's responsible for all of this, really, all of this that is happening in front of you right now. Because when I burned out, I went to Europe at the beginning of 2022. I booked a one-way plane ticket to Edinburgh, Scotland. And I had a couple loose plans of where I could go, wanted to go, was going to go. But essentially, I was like, I made a bunch of money from this online course. I don't have to work for a while. I need to not work for a while. Let's just figure this out. I started listening to Martha Beck's book, The Way of Integrity. And I just remember going on these like 10, 11, 12 mile walks around Edinburgh in February, just like bundled up. And I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked. And I listened to that book over and over and over. And it really started fucking my shit up, which it's designed to do, because coming into alignment, coming into integrity will fuck all your shit up that has not been working because you have not been in alignment and have not been in integrity. Everything I'm experiencing in my body is my body trying to get my attention to get me to tell the truth to myself, first and foremost, then to other people from that point. Nothing feels better than telling the truth. There isn't anything worth not telling the truth about. And my body is significantly more well when I'm willing to do that. And it's hard at first. And then it just becomes easier. And now it's just the only thing I'm willing to do. And so, yeah, she's my favorite public figure. Also, just as a little anecdote, she's poly. I'm poly. It's great because I also really think that for many people, if you take the whole, I got to tell the truth about the experience I'm having, like to its fullest extent, like you will discover that not really natural for me to claim that I can only possibly be in love with one person at a time. And I think more people are waking up to that being true for them too. And so I love when she articulates her experience of how that manifested for her and her two partners, Karen and Rowan. And it's just really sweet. It's a wonderful story. And it feels really resonant with my lived experience too. So
Martha.
Yes.
Love her.
Mm-hmm.
What is a personal practice or ritual you rely on to stay grounded in your body amidst the demands of your career?
Morning pages. I am permanently in debt to Julia Cameron, and I started it in December of 2021. So I started writing morning pages. The Artist Way is 12 weeks long. And so I did December and January still when I was based in Nashville. And then I took it with me when I flew to Scotland on February 1st and finished it sitting in a little cafe in Inverness in the Scottish Highlands as the snow was gently falling outside the window. It was, quite idyllic and wonderful. Yeah, it's just you wake up in the morning and write 3 pages stream of consciousness, no editing. Don't share them with anyone. I've broken that rule a couple of times. And I am working on my 30th notebook now. I'm currently in my 30th notebook. It's been life-changing for me.
I love that so much. Looking back, is there a piece of advice you'd give your younger self when you were just starting out on this journey?
I don't regret how long it took me to really finally go, okay, body, I'm hearing you. I'm committing to listening to you, like through no filter, just you. Tell me what's going on. I don't regret how long that took me. And I think the piece of advice that I would give my younger self is like, do that sooner. Like she knows, and you know that she knows. And I mean, it almost sounds so cliche in this context to be like, listen to your body, but like really listen. Really listen and understand that what she's saying is necessary data. And if you really get adept at listening, which is what the main thing I feel like I do for a living is just like teach people somatic literacy and like hold space for people as they learn this like adeptness at that communication and learn how to translate what their body is saying. I would probably tell my younger self, like, that is what's going on here. And your suspicion is correct. And if you just keep leaning into that, like, you're going to be fine.
Things are cliche for a reason, I think.
Yes,
it's
agreed.
Beautiful. What's a simple pleasure or indulgence that you never compromise on, no matter how busy life gets?
Okay, again, I loved the way that you were like, there's something about this that feels a little fundamentalist. Like never, like I do compromise on these things with the caveat of like never say never. I will say the thing that is really consistent is a nourishing, complex, time-consuming to make breakfast. There is something, yes, I know. It's like sweet potatoes and a bunch of vegetables and eggs. And now at this point, I do organ meat as well. And just like red onion and garlic, and it's super flavorful, and it gets like baked in the oven with a cast iron for a little while. Like it is, I've been doing it for almost 10 years, every single morning, most mornings. It's taken different iterations over the years. Like now, sometimes I'll like bake apples in with it, or like I'll put dates in it. I've upgraded it recently by always putting some kind of nut, like a cashew or almonds in it. Just a really nourishing, delicious, complex breakfast that does take time to make. It's a little simple pleasure, but it feels, I'm very committed to the practice of that.
Sounds delicious.
Mm-hmm. I'll make it for you sometime.
I'm signed up. I'm ready. Let's do it. Mm-hmm. Last question. What do you believe you're here for?
I'm here to feel good. I'm here to feel good. And it delighted me so much because I knew that was going to be my answer. And then I didn't know what your answer was going to be last week. And then you basically said that same answer. And I was like, oh my God. Because again, for me as well, that is not the answer that I would have given to this question throughout most of my life. Throughout most of my life, it would have been some sort of, I believe I'm here to give myself away and being of service to others. And it's not that that isn't part of it, because that also is part of what feels good. Like giving out from the overflow feels excellent, feels like indescribably excellent. But the primary thing that I know and believe that I am here for is to have the experience of it feeling good to be in a body. That's it. And anything specific that grows out of that is like, that's the journey of life. That's the journey I'm on in this human experience of like, navigating the world and experiencing the variety and contrast that there is to experience, and then developing preferences, and from those preferences, developing desires, and then like, holding intention around those desires, and then getting to like make stuff by myself or with other people, like bring ideas forth, manifest ideas through like, my intention and my efforts. It's just like, it's such a delightful process, but all of that is ultimately in the service of my body feeling good, because that's all reality is actually. And there will be so much more that I'll articulate throughout this season of just like, it will be revealing to people like what my deepest held beliefs are regarding like kind of the philosophy of the body and what all this is for in the first place. But there's no other way, in my opinion, to describe or define reality than an individual somatic experience. And your reality is what you are experiencing in your body. My reality is what I'm experiencing in my body. And I believe that I am the one who shapes and determines that based on the story I'm telling myself about the experience I'm having. And that's been the journey of the last like 2.5 years of my life, of realizing like, oh, I can really help my body out here by just deciding to make meaning out of everything, and just deciding that I'm going to explain my circumstances and my experiences to myself in a way that ultimately facilitates like my highest good, because it facilitates my greatest well-being, and it facilitates the development of regulation and resilience in my nervous system. And so I believe I'm here to feel good. And I also believe I'm here to help or model maybe a little bit of both, that like that's possible to do, because I believe that all bodies are here to feel good. And I'm here to have fun. Like I'm here to have fun in that process, because it is a fun process. Like experiencing greater and greater vitality as I age is like, wow, I didn't know that was like an item on the menu that I could order, and like, but it's real and it's happening, and it feels amazing.
I'm like stewing in that answer. I love it so much. And I'll say like my answer, it didn't only come from you, but you were one of the teachers that brought me to that answer being true for me, not in a way where I'm like a student and you're the guru or anything like that, but like you were one of multiple sources of like it just being true that I am also here to feel good, like then in my body. That just also rings true. So thank you for helping and modeling.
Yeah.
Because that here I am as one of many.
I really love that, because it is true. Like if I believe it about me, I believe it about you. Like, period. Like that's it. And so
that's it.
When I get to be in the presence of someone who is like, I believe this about myself. I believe that I'm like not only allowed to feel good, but like that's the main thing I'm here for. Because that is the main thing that like I'll just finish this up by just articulating again, like my deepest held belief is it's supposed to feel good to be in a body. That's it. And if it's not feeling good to be in a body, really high likelihood, chances are that your body is trying to communicate to you why and how it can start feeling good instead.
Yes. That's it. The podcast could have just been that last sentence.
Yeah, there you go.
It's good that it's more.
Summarize all of the stream of consciousness into
period.
That. Yes.
Yes. So the last thing that we do here as we close out this episode, where I just feel like I feel closer to you, I feel more connected to you, and it really is such a pleasure and an honor to watch up close as you kind of unfold publicly, if you will, and in telling the truth. I just think that's the most fascinating and compelling thing I could do with my time,
Yeah.
So with that, bringing it to a close, what is a part of your body that you want to appreciate this week? You want to dedicate this episode to this part of your body?
The part of my body that I want to bring appreciation for and gratitude towards this week, I don't know if I should say is or are. I don't know if they come as a package deal or a singular. My tear ducts. I would really love to appreciate my tear ducts, because this thing happened last night and again this morning where talking through some like sensitive stuff that felt really tender with my partner, Tyler. And I was feeling kind of like, I was starting to like guard a little bit and kind of going inward. And we were talking through like a tough thing and saying these things, and also sitting in silence kind of like retracted a little bit in myself. Quite suddenly, I just started crying. And I do mean that, like, I didn't know, like I definitely felt the sensation in like my chest and in my throat and kind of behind my eyes of like emotion, that there was like tension building up. But I was not interested in participating in crying. And my body was just like, I am though, because this is a neutral tension release that I need you to not have a story attached to you right now, that this makes you like weak or vulnerable in some way. And then I articulated that, and then I just started weeping. And I was like, apparently I needed to cry, or like she needed to cry, or the 8-year-old me needed to cry, or, I have so much appreciation for the way my tear ducts helped to call me into my own integrity and helped to facilitate alignment for me in releasing that tension, so that some parts of my brain could shut down and other parts of my brain could fire back on, so that I could then have a more successful conversation with my partner, and we could understand each other better, and we could experience the intimacy and vulnerability that is for us to experience. And once again, none of that was my idea. That was her idea. And I'm really, really grateful that she was like, I'm just going to cry now. I'm just going to do that for you. So thank you, tear ducts.
Yes, tear ducts. So cleansing, so healing, so helpful. Well, thank you so much. As always, listeners, think about what part of your body you want to appreciate this week. And I just have so much appreciation for you, Jamie. Thank you for everything that you shared.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you for being such a safe person and safe place for me to just kind of find out what I'm about to say the moment it's coming out of my mouth. That hasn't always felt safe to do. And you are a person that I feel very safe to do that with. So thank you so much for your presence today.
My pleasure. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye. This is Experiential Anatomy. Thanks for listening. I'm Joan Chan.
And I'm Jamie Lee Finch. Experiential Anatomy is co-hosted and created by us.
Amber Wyndham is the editor. Julia Wyndham is the supervising producer.
senior producer is Elizabeth Wyndham. Aaron Beatty leads our community management.
Our theme music is Park Pier 3 by G's Guy.
If you have any thoughts, questions, or stories to share about this week's episode, email us at exanatomy@gmail.com.
Please follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And remember to join us over at exanatomy.substack.com.
Experiential Anatomy is produced by Windhaven Productions.
You're doing so good, Jamie.
I'm very sweaty.
Are you?
Oh.